You're born a refugee. Don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Most of the NFL teams will take the field today, competing not just among themselves, but with this culture moment we've been in for the last 2 years around the place of politics in sports. As Nike's new ad campaign featuring former NFL player Colin Kaepernick triggered the expected response from the right this week, whether it was President Trump throwing the prime red meat to his base, or members of that base lynching their three-figure running shoes. But the left was also had its own dissension over the campaign this week, divided on whether the campaign is a real good faith effort to acknowledge Kaepernick's message, or just a craven ploy to sell more sneakers under the guise of corporate wokeness. Joining me now is Alaina Bergeron, editor-in-chief of SB Nation, and Alejandro Danwa, editor-in-chief of Shadow League and producer for ESPN Films. Let me go to you first, Alaina. As expected, President Trump took issue. As expected, he went straight to energize his base. People said they're boycotting, some on the right burning three-figure items. But the question is, in the middle of all of this, what Kaepernick stood for, or I should say took a knee for, the fight against police abuse and racism in this country, shouldn't get mixed up in between all of this debate on ads and debate on whether or not someone should wear someone's sneakers or not.
Well, no, it shouldn't get lost in that. And I think Nike is making a very smart play by continuing to keep it at the fore. As a black woman in America, I have all sorts of issues with the idea that the revolution has to be commodified. But as a sports fan, I recognize the tremendous power of sports to change culture. And for Nike, who is a huge partner with the NFL, they do the jerseys this year and all the equipment, to keep Kaepernick at the fore and keep his movement and his mission, sort of give it a platform during primetime NFL. This week we saw that this commercial aired right after halftime of the season opener to force the league to keep confronting Kaepernick when it seems that, owners will conspire to keep him out of the league. I think that is commendable.
Now, Alejandro, let me ask you, doesn't that really, in effect, bring the issue and keep the issue where it needs to be, and that is in the mainstream dialogue and conversation in the country? I remember when I was a teenager and we all were protesting the war in Vietnam when I was in high school, when Muhammad Ali, who was then the heavyweight champion of the world, stood up and said, "I won't go to the war." It made it a mainstream issue, and it added to the anti-war effort. So isn't Kaepernick, who's not facing jail or poverty like Ali, but by making this stand and then by having the Nikes of the world put it in a mainstream commercial, isn't it really advancing the conversation and advancing those of us that want to see these issues addressed?
Without a doubt. I think the NFL made a wild miscalculation by trying to ostracize and isolate Colin Kaepernick. And now that he is back as the face of the new athlete activist, now that this ad campaign is just beginning to gain some steam, we are going to see a reemergence of the issue. We are going to see people siding with and getting a better understanding of what it is he did. And we're going to see people really evaluate the fact that this man is not longer employed in the NFL And why is that? And I thought it was a sense of poetic justice that the NFL tried to say that they didn't want to alienate their corporate sponsors, and this was a big reason why they were coming so down on the silent protests when one of their biggest corporate sponsors basically said to them what Rick James told Charlie Murphy. What do the five fingers say to the face? Slap.
Well, you quoted Rick James correctly, I might say. Let me go back to you, Alana. The question here becomes, does this also, a lot of people, I've had conversations with, what is Nike's motivation? And that is a corporation is a corporation. I think we ought to be focused more on the motivation of the players like Colin Kaepernick and the continuing issues that they're fighting for, because we're still fighting. I mean, I did Stephon Clark's eulogy at his funeral, was killed by police this year. This is 2 years after the knee started. So the issue is still there, and I think that what they've done and what Colin Kaepernick has done is put a spotlight on issues that are still needed to be addressed in this country. Does this also put pressure on other athletes as the season starts tonight? What are you going to do? Are you going to take a knee? Are you going to continue this? Or are you going to start backing up now and fall in line, so to speak?
Well, I think it does put more pressure on athletes, not just in football, but across the board, because the athletes that are part of this Nike campaign and the athletes that they're focused on promoting right now, the LeBron Jameses and the Serena Williams of the world, are people that not only move sneakers and move merchandise, but people who are taking a stand. And so one of the great ironies of this ad campaign is it focuses on the sacrifices that people make to play sports. But Colin Kaepernick has actually sacrificed his sporting pursuit in order to stand up for what he believes in. And Nike, through this opportunity, has sort of given him a way to make a different livelihood outside of the realm of the NFL. They've taken what the campaign is doing and the deal they've signed him to as a way not only to give him a platform, to also to cut him a check. And so what this does is says to athletes, hey, you won't lose endorsers, at least not the Nikes of the world, if you do stand up. So what are you going to do?
Alejandro, I think that the other part of this is just looking at it from a pure marketing way. How do you tell people to stand up for more than themselves, showing Serena, showing LeBron James, and not show how Colin Kaepernick stood up for more than himself, stood up for people that he didn't even know that were shot down at the risk of his career, which has been stopped? How would they have, in all honesty, done the theme they chose without including him?
Well, I think that, they were very intelligent by including him. And as Elena, so succinctly points out, we are at a new age of athletes who are utilizing their platforms and their resources to bring about not only awareness, but societal change. And it's not just simply the LeBron Jameses of the world and the Serena Williamses of the world who are following behind the ancestors of people like, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Arthur Ashe in terms of their spiritual advisors around bringing context to these issues. But, I think what's really going to happen now, and I think Nike was very diligent in assessing this, is there's a huge collusion case against the NFL, which Colin Kaepernick is fighting now. So there are a bunch of different factors that went into this decision. And Colin Kaepernick is going to reemerge, as we've already said, as one of the main topics in the sports landscape. And I believe this is going to be a watershed moment, because you have athletes, building schools. You have athletes doing such remarkable things and putting their money where their mouth is.
I'm going to have to cut you off because we're out of time, but I think that they're continuing a tradition that Kareem and the Olympics 68 track stars and others did, and they're bringing it to another level. And I think Colin certainly has become the face of that. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Alejandro. Coming up, a new film that has guns aplenty, anti-government crazies, and a touch of madness and a provocative statement on the Second Amendment. That's next.